am super psyched to be continuing into our book, Fahrenheit 451, with you guys, and we are officially starting part 2. Woohoo! So, the next couple of pages that you guys are going to have to read, you're starting on page 67, and then you read to 97. So it's a pretty good chunk, and there's actually a lot of stuff in here, so let's kind of break it down. So if you remember that where we left off from the end of part 1, basically Guy had just revealed to Mildred that he had actually been taking books all along, and that this wasn't necessarily something that had just started with Clarice. It is something that had kind of been building for a while. And so this chapter, or this part, is called The Sieve in the Sand. And we'll kind of get into what a sieve and why he titled it that in just a second. But basically it starts off with Guy and Mildred talking, and they're reading through the books. Mildred really does not seem to understand why they're even bothering to read these books. It's way more interesting to watch TV, but Guy is insisting, no, we really have to read these books. We have to get in, we have to figure out what is so important about these books that we don't have in regular life. They're reading through it and they're not super understanding why are these so important. They're reading it, they're not really understanding what it has to say. It kind of goes back into that whole idea of history repeating itself. I'm looking at the top of page 70 in your books. At the top of page 70 is talking about books can get us half out of the cave. They might just stop us from making the same mistakes. I don't hear those people in your parlor talking about it. So basically he's saying maybe books are the way that we can save ourselves as a society, because obviously what's been going on isn't working, because people like Mildred are intensely sad enough to kill themselves, so something's wrong with society. So they come across a problem. They can't really understand the books, and so what Guy Montag suggests is, hey, maybe I can find a teacher who can teach me how to read these books and how to see what's really going on with them. And he remembers back when he was working as a fireman, one time he came across this old professor. And so we're going to be introduced to this new character called Faber. And Faber is an old professor. He came up to him and he's talking about how Faber said that I talk about the meaning of things. I sit here and I know that I'm alive. And so Faber has these answers that Montag is really seeking after. Instead of investigating Faber like he should have, instead he is just putting him under future investigations. He's kind of thinking in the back of his mind like, okay, this guy knows what's up. He's talking about the meaning of things and not just what the things are. He tries to call Faber and ask him, but Faber gets really scared. Why would Faber get scared? Well, if a fireman is calling you and is like, hey, have you heard about the books here lately? It's probably a scary situation, especially because now we know the consequences of reading. He's talking about how they are also having a problem, because if you remember from back when Beatty came to visit, Beatty had said, like, you can read this book for right now, but you'll come to me eventually, and you'll have to return this book, or we'll come here and burn it for you. It's kind of a veiled threat a little bit there. And so they have a problem. They have to take a book into Beatty. So which book did they choose to have Beatty be destroyed? So because Beatty doesn't know that Guy has more than one book. And so they're trying to kind of decide which one to take. Mildred is not really listening. She's just like, I really want to watch TV. My friends are coming over. Of course, that classic Mildred style where she has no clue what's going on and absolutely no interest in anything real whatsoever. And so all she wants to do is watch this TV character called the White Clown. And right before Guy gets frustrated and leaves to go and find Faber, he asks Mildred at the door, Millie, does the White Clown love you? Does your family, meaning the people on the TV show she watches, love you very much, love you with all of their heart and their soul? And she's just like, what? not even understanding the question of loving you and what that means. He is in the subway. After that, he gets on the subway to go and visit Faber, and he's kind of wanting this old feeling to come back. He's kind of like, oh, I kind of wish that I didn't discover this whole thing. I kind of wish that I could just go back and go to what I felt before, contentment. And he's sitting on the subway and he has this memory, and he kind of relates what he's feeling right now to this childhood memory of his cousin saying, if you fill up this sieve, I'll give you a dime. So a sieve is basically, it's sort of like a strainer, and there's like little holes in the bottom, and the reason that he can't fill up the sieve is because there's holes in the bottom. So it's sort of, he says that it's sort of like society is dumping all of these good, nice, fun things, but it's not really filling you up because there's a hole in the bottom that's not stable, it's not solid. And so he kind of makes that metaphor. And when it's talking about, at the bottom of page 74, it's talking about Denham's dentifrice. This is an advertisement for a dentist. So it keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. It's kind of driving him crazy because he's trying to read and he gets distracted by this advertisement that's just constantly playing. So it kind of goes on. He makes it to Faber's house. Faber is really apprehensive. He's this crazy old professor. It says that his skin is as white as the walls. So he's a really skinny old guy. He kind of has crazy hair. His eyes are faded, and he sees the book in Montag's hand, so he kind of trusts him because Montag is holding this book. So he comes in and he's kind of asking, like, why do you have this book? And Montag is saying, like, my wife is dying, I want to know what's going on, like, can you explain this to me? And Faber's like, no, I'm not going to help you. I'm too scared to really help you and to really do anything. The only reason that I've gotten this far is because I've kind of been a cowardly person. I haven't protested when they started taking the books away, so I'm not really gonna get involved now because I'm really like not interested in getting in trouble. And something that I kind of thought was interesting at the bottom of page 77 is he even brings up Christ because Montag's holding a Bible. And so he brings up Christ, and he's saying that even Christ has made it into the TV shows in the parlor, but he's not like the actual God that we think of today. It says he's a regular peppermint stick now, all sugar crystallized, and he's making veiled references to certain commercial products. So they turned Jesus into a commercial to sell products, which is super crazy. But then Faber kind of goes into the three things that society is missing. He goes into the three of them and he describes them, but basically if you look at the top of page 81, it summarizes them. Number one, quality of information. So not just putting out the information, but it's actually good information. And he's saying that it's not the paper themselves. When it talks about the texture of the books, it's not actually talking about like the physical books. It's talking about like what's in the book. So he's saying that there's good books and there's bad books, which we know obviously. And he's talking about how some books can have really good quality and the content, and it's actually things that make you think and new ideas. And number two, the leisure to digest it. So he's talking about how we're always so caught up in, there's also this thing called like the rat race. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before, but the rat race is like, we're all constantly going, and the TV just shouts things at us all the time, and we don't have enough time to like sit and digest and really think about the things that are going on in life. And then number three, there is the right to carry out actions based off of what we've learned. So not only can we take the time to read and understand new information and new ideas, we also have the quality of information, and then we can act on that information. So they kind of come up with a plan. So we're kind of going through page 81 and into page 82, and they kind of come up with this plan, because how can we snap society into realizing that there's a problem and that we need to fix this problem? And so what they decide to do is, it's originally Faber's idea. He kind of said it as a joke, and then Montag's like, that's actually a really good idea. He's talking about putting books and printing books and putting them in firehouses, in firemen's houses, and setting the alarm so that it has to burn down all of the firemen and all of the firemen's houses. So it would sort of stop this whole process of being scared to read, because there's no consequences anymore, because there's no more firemen. So that's sort of their plan that they have to go with. At first, Faber is like, nah, you can't really save everybody. That's what that paragraph in the middle of page 82 is saying. You can't save everybody. Maybe society will be fixed one day, but you should really just save yourself. And Montag is just getting really frustrated by Faber's negativity and really Faber's cowardice, because he's kind of being a weenie right now. And so what he decides to do is he starts ripping up the Bible in front of him. And Faber freaks out and he's like, no, like, this is one of the only copies of the Bible left. You can't tear it up. And so he agrees that he will help to set the fires and to help to print these books. And so that's sort of what they decide to do. They decide that, okay, we're going to start printing more books, and enable for us to do that, we're going to need money to pay this old retired printer. And so that's why Montag goes back. He needs to get the money, and something that Faber gives him, I don't know if you caught this, he gives him this thing, and it looks like a seashell, which, remember, is sort of like we talked about, like it's sort of like an AirPod where you put it in your ear and it'll talk, but in this case it's like a walkie-talkie, so that Faber can understand what is going on with Montag, and then he can also talk to him at the same time. I don't know if you caught the reasoning behind why this is the case, or why he felt that he needed this, but because he was super, Guy Montag was super afraid that he would get back and then Beatty would talk him out of it. Because Beatty seems so logical, right? It seems like he knows what's going on. Okay, so that's basically kind of what is talking about through the pages in the 80s. Once we get to about page 89, we get to the point where Mildred's friends come over. And they knock on the door, and they're gonna watch TV with Mildred. So that's kind of like what they're over there to do. And Guy comes in and he turns off the TV and he's like, no, let's have a serious conversation. And if you notice, it's kind of making the women really uneasy. They're like, we literally came over here to watch TV. Like, we didn't come over here to talk about anything serious. And then if you talk about page 91, it starts talking about their husbands and their children. When it's talking about the war, it's kind of a confusing concept. I don't know if you remember, but way back at the beginning, they talked about this war that was going to be starting, and like a nuclear war. And so this is sort of what they're referencing, this vague war. And when they talk all the time about US airplanes flying overhead or men being deployed for this war, that's sort of what they're talking about. So if you look, like, what sort of a relationship or marriage do they have? And especially their relationship with their children. So that's the question that I want you to answer in the Google form. What is the relationship and marriage like between families in this society? When it talks about a cesarean section, I'm pretty sure most of you guys know that, but that's like when you have a baby and they cut it out of your stomach instead of having it naturally. So that's what they talk about, and how they really never see their children, and the only time that their children are home, they just sit them down in front of their TV and walk away, which if you kind of think about society, there are some parents who would do that, where they just turn on the TV and walk away, and the TV will entertain the children all the time. And so he starts to talk about politics. Guy's trying to talk to them about marriage and family, and they're just being dumb. They're not answering. They're just kind of flippant about it. They just really want to get back to their TV show. So Guy kind of flips out and he grabs a book and he starts shouting like, "This is the book, like this is what we should be doing instead. This is super important." Faber is in his ear and he's like, "Oh man, you're blowing our cover. What are you doing? You're gonna share it with these ladies and then they're gonna report you and it's gonna be terrible. Like, you gotta blow it off." And remember how at the end of part 1, how we said that it probably wasn't smart of Montag to trust Mildred with this secret that he had all these books? Well, she's actually kind of coming in clutch for the first time ever. She kind of plays it off and saves him a little bit and just makes up some fake story about how all firemen are able to bring home a book once a year and like share this book and just show how stupid books are and how much of a destructive quality they are, just to remind everybody as like a training purpose. So actually Mildred is able to kind of save his butt a little bit. So he reads this poem and the women kind of freak out and they're crying, and Mrs. Phelps is crying. That's one of Mildred's friends. And she's just sad because, first of all, this is probably the first text that she's read in maybe even her whole life, or have it be read to her. And it's actually something that is substantial. It's not something fake that's being provided through some TV show. And so that's why she kind of is being really scared. And then Montag has to sort of fake that this was all some sort of a joke or some sort of like a training program. So he is forced to take the book and then throw it into the furnace and burn that book. And that is the part that we're going to end on. So there is a lot to unpack there. We have a whole new character. We have a whole new plot on what the character Montag and Faber are going to work together to do. We have to see what's going to happen as far as, are they going to start printing the books? What is this whole scheme going to work? What is Beatty going to say? Do you think that Mildred will continue to help Montag, or do you think that she's going to tell on him? Those are going to be some interesting questions that we'll get to. So that is what you guys are doing this week, and sort of from here on out, it's mostly just going to be wrapping up the book, sort of winding down assignments. So this week, you guys have turned in your first draft last Friday, and I'm going to be grading them and writing notes on them and releasing them back to you guys with my notes. So I want you, once you get your edited copy back, I want you to go back, edit, make the changes that I say that you needed to make, and then you guys need to turn in your final draft by next week Friday. So I believe that's May 8th. So May 8th, you need to turn in your finished copy of the research paper. And then after that, all we're gonna do is just finish the book. No more research paper for the end of the year. So really the biggest hump probably was last week with that first draft, and now you're just in that final stages, and that final draft will be put in as a writing grade, so that will be 15% of your grade. So don't forget, go back, look at your edits, edit it, and then turn it back into turn it in by Friday, May 8th. And I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you on video or on YouTube pretty soon.